And welcome into this week's edition of The Locker Room. Got a great show for you. A lot of basketball talk today, and we'll also hear a little bit later on from the Anniston girls head coach Eddie Bullock coming up in our one-on-one segment. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the basketball talk, Mickey. The Alabama Crimson Tide, they've had big wins over Texas A&M, Florida. They lose to Mississippi State. They lose to Auburn. They lose to Kentucky. What's Avery Johnson do now you're on the bubble of the tournament?
Well, I think that's the big question. I think Auburn obviously is out. The big question is, will Alabama get in? And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about they've got some good wins. You know, the win at LSU was really, really strong, and that was just recently. But the loss to Mississippi State and the loss earlier in the season at Auburn, even though they will be favored to beat Auburn when they play them at home, one of those two losses probably would have been okay with some of their wins, but losing both of those games, I don't know. They're definitely on the bubble, and if they don't make it, it'll probably be one of those two games that they'll point to.
As a new head coach in Avery Johnson, how do you think he's turned this program around at Alabama?
I think he's done a very good job. I think a lot of people were questioning that in the beginning, but I think he's kind of seems to have gotten his footing under him now, and I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to recruit well. I think we'll probably see some of the best recruiting in the state with Bruce Pearl and Avery Johnson that we've seen in a long time. And Avery Johnson will get his fair share, obviously the NBA pedigree, the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, playing in the NBA all those years with the San Antonio Spurs. He's got an NBA championship ring he can walk in and show off. So he's going to recruit well, and I think he's shown that the X's and O's and the on-the-court stuff is going to be there as well. So I think the future of that program is on solid footing as well. Even though Auburn doesn't have the same results Alabama's got, I think Auburn with Bruce Pearl will be fine too.
Well, speaking of Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers, it's been an interesting season for them. Like we said, they got a win over Alabama, but not quite the way they've wanted it to go so far.
They have just really been snake bit this year. The injuries are well documented. They've had some disciplinary problems with their point guard Kareem Canty, who is no longer with the team. But I'm still a buyer of Auburn basketball. I believe that with what Bruce Pearl, the enthusiasm he's brought to the program, the assistant coaching muscle he's got on the bench, especially with Chuck Person sitting by his side, who, by the way, both of those were at the Northeast Regional this week watching some players that are going to be playing on the plane soon, especially the big guy from Spain Park. They were at the Gaston City Spain Park game on Tuesday. But when they get everybody back healthy and then this incoming recruiting class joins them next year, I think you'll see a dramatic turn with Auburn next year. And they've shown some flashes this year. They've just been too outmanned and too few bodies. I mean, they're guys playing, getting in minutes in the rotation that probably won't even make Auburn's team in a couple of years. So that's the situation they're in.
You mentioned Bruce Pearl was at the Northeast Regionals to take a look at Austin Wiley from Spain Park. Looking at him yesterday when we watched him, what do you see in him in an Auburn jersey in the next few years?
You know, when we had Spain Park in our showcase back in December, that was the first time I'd ever seen him in person. And he kind of grew on me as that game went on because that was a great game between Spain Park and Gaston City, went into overtime with Spain Park winning. But I think he even impressed me more in the game on Tuesday because that game with Gaston City was nip and tuck the whole way.
Right.
Gaston City had an opportunity to win that game. That game got in the fourth quarter, and it was decided by Austin Wiley blocking shots. There were about 4 trips down the court that Gaston City had, 4 drives to the basket. He erased them, and that's what won the game. That's why they're going to go to Birmingham and continue to compete for a state championship. I think his offensive game, there's something there. I just think he needs some polishing and someone to work with him, and they will. But I think the biggest question people had about him was he just a big, soft giant? Right. I don't think he's soft. I think he's going to be an outstanding player at the next level.
Well, let's keep this high school basketball talk going. Mickey, we've seen a lot of great basketball up at Jacksonville State this past week. We saw Sacred Heart, of course, get the big win over Winterboro. They'll be back in Birmingham. But what are some things that stood out to you at the Northeast Regionals on the boys' side of the bracket?
Well, while we're showing the video of Sacred Heart, obviously we want to give them their kudos. Another outstanding showing as they pick up another region championship. Here we see Gaston City coming on the floor for what was one of the best games of the tournament against Spain Park in that 7A region championship game. The largest crowd I personally have ever seen at Pete Matthews Coliseum. It was. You talk about an atmosphere. As a matter of fact, Bruce Pearl said he was at this game. He's sitting down at that far bench there. table there that has the JSU logo on it. He made the comment that that was the best atmosphere for a high school basketball game that he had ever seen, which says a lot for what JSU's done with Pete Matthews and the remodel. And here you see highlights of Anniston, J.O. Johnson. To me, Anniston kind of got hosed in this game. You know, nobody gave them a chance to win this game. They won this game everywhere but the scoreboard. There toward the end of the game, there was kind of a phantom foul called on Trey Croft. It enabled Petty to go to the free throw line. He hit a couple of free throws. It wound up being the difference in the game. To me, that's unfortunate because the officials up until that point had let them play. And it was kind of a ticky-tacky call. And, you know, I guess Petty got the star treatment there. A lot of people were saying at the tournament. But J.O. Johnson clearly is one of the best teams, if not the best team in the state. But Anniston should have beaten them in that game. And I know it was a tough loss. Schussler Ware's last game, some great seniors. That's a senior-laden team with Anniston, with Bam Ross, Akeem Ross, and Trey Croft, and Willie Thomas. They're going to lose all those guys. And those guys really wanted to get to Birmingham. But with Anniston's win over Sacred Heart in the county tournament, and with their showing against J.O. Johnson in a game that everybody there knows they should have won, Anniston proved this year they were one of the top teams in the state in any classification. They just came up 2 games short of playing for a championship. And
like you mentioned, Schussler Ware's final game this week. We've talked to him last week. We've talked a lot about this. But the way he went out, it's a tough loss. But still, the way they played, this is some of the best Anniston basketball I've seen this year. Well, you know, J.O. Johnson waxed him last year, and I loved Coach Ware's comment in his post-game press conference. He had, you know, he's very quiet and soft-spoken. There was a point in that press conference where he just hit the table, and he raised his voice, and he said, "We were not going to let them come in here and beat the mess out of us again." And we went out and played ball, and we should have won the game. No regrets. We left it all on the court. And even though you know he was heartbroken over the loss because they should have won, he was very proud of how his players played because they were, I mean, J.O. Johnson, their starting lineup has a 6'5", a 6'6", and a 6'7". Anniston's biggest player is 6'1", maybe 6'2". And they tied 25-25 in rebounds. That tells you how good Anniston played in that game. We'll talk a little bit more about the Anniston girls come a little bit later on. But on the girls' side of the bracket, you got Spring Garden, you got Anniston returning to Birmingham. Yeah, and you know, I saw at the time of this taping, the Sacs girls lost earlier today to Locust Fort, but that was a great game, a very high-scoring game. Hated it for the Lady Wildcats, the county champions for this year. They get knocked out, but you're right. Spring Garden and Anniston move on, which is something we seem to say every year. And I know, as you mentioned, we'll have more with Coach Eddie Bullock coming up in a moment, but that was quite an inspiring game for the Anniston girls. And let's take a look now at the pairings for the Final Four, and let's take a look at the boys first. It'll be the Sacred Heart Cardinals. They will take on the winner of Keith and Cornerstone. That will be at Monday at 1:30 over the BJCC Arena, and the championship game will be played March 3rd at 5:45 p.m. And on the girls' side, in 1A, Spring Garden will take on the winner of Keith and Lochapoka Monday at noon, and the championship will be at 4 o'clock on March 3rd. And the Anniston Lady Bulldogs will take on Booker T. Washington of Tuskegee or Central Tuscaloosa Wednesday at 6 p.m., and the championship will be March 5th at 9 a.m. Again, we're going to talk more Anniston girls basketball coming up next as Gerhard Mathangani went one-on-one with Eddie Bullock. So stay with us here in the locker room.
And welcome back into the locker room. We are one-on-one with Anniston girls coach Eddie Bullock, fresh off winning the Class 5A Girls Regional Championship. First off, Coach, just talk about the emotions of this moment, finally capturing that region title.
Well, I'm just glad it's over with. The hardest thing is to wait, you know, waiting for the game and then getting through the game. It's a emotional drain, and you know you want to get through it. Even though I've done it before, you know, you can't wait to get it over with, and I'm just glad we were able to come out with a win.
It seems like every year Anniston's always in the hunt to do it, but to actually go out each and every year and accomplish that fact as far as getting a regional or winning a county championship or winning any kind of title, what goes into it as far as coaching goes and preparation goes for you, keeping the girls level-headed when the expectations are so high?
Well, first of all, you just have to try to keep all the sheep in the fold. You know, we got a few girls, got some girls at the middle school, and you want to get them interested in what you're doing. And then once you get them interested in what you're doing, you can kind of I guess, give them a little history about what you've done in the past. You can let them see your trophies, and, you know, you actually have the factual things to back it up. And then once you do that, it's more or less just living up to the expectations. You know, we don't put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but we know that we had some girls before us to set the stage, and those girls always come back during this time. And, you know, sometimes I may have 15 or 20 in the locker room, and they you know, they pretty much, I don't have to do any talking. They'll tell the girls, you know, hey, look, you need to do this because this is what we expect out of y'all, and they live up to it, yeah.
What is the difference in what makes this team so special?
Well, this is probably the most unique team that I've coached as far as from a mental point of view. You know, I really don't have a person that's a very vocal leader. I really don't have that one individual that separates themselves as being the, you know, alpha player, you know, that just step out and, you know, put everybody else in check, you know. And I've had to coach that the entire year. And, you know, I've been trying to use each senior at one point in time. And actually, probably the best lead I got on the team is my niece, Jamaya Bullock, and she comes off the bench. But, you know, she has a way of corralling everybody in, and they listen to her, you know. And, you know, it's been a challenge doing that and, you know, actually getting them to believe in some of the philosophies and the things that we do. So, you know, once we get that, you know, in place or we got that in check, you know, we start peaking at the right time.
Absolutely. We're coming off the region championship where Raven Cooley had the game of her life, 32 points. Talk about what she brings to this team.
Raven is probably the quickest all-around shooter that I've had. I've had some great shooters, but they wasn't as quick as she was. And then I've had some people that was as quick as she is, but they couldn't shoot as well as she does. And, you know, actually sometimes she shoots a little too fast, you know, and I have to slow her down. But and she's a great defender, you know. And I told her, I said, you got all the assets, you know, to be a great collegiate player, you know. She just, you know, happens to be 5'5" and, you know, 5'6", and that's a little small for big-time colleges. But, you know, everything else, she has all the aspects you would want in a player. Hard worker, you know, she works all the time, and she just, you know, she's just a tremendous player. I've enjoyed coaching her.
You go from your building to this building and now to the BJCC. You've been around coaching for a long time. Just talk about what the high school basketball playoffs mean to you as a coach, navigating through all the different environments and all these different atmospheres.
It means so much. You know, I told the girls I feel a little guilty sometimes because we've been over there and, you know, we hadn't been able to win the state championship. And the first time I went there, you know, I knew how to coach the team, but I'd never been in that environment, and I had to kind of get used to some of the things that go on and, you know, how to manage your team time and things like that. But, you know, after I went back, I kind of ran into some bad luck. You know, I met midfield coming off a second championship, which that was their third, and they had actually been there 5 consecutive times, you know, compared to my one. And then, of course, I had a couple of years ago the 1 point loss to Calera, and then last year the 2 point loss to Brubaker Tech. So, you know, I just feel like this year, you know, even though we known and, you know, team out of the Central, they're the favorites. I just feel like it's our time, and you know, it's gonna be hard to deny us an opportunity at that trophy.
Absolutely. Final question for you as a coach. Talk about just the preparation, this moment from, you know, you wait for a long time to play a regional game, then you wait after a regional championship to play in the Final Four. Just talk about what this means for you as a coach and some of the things that your team will go through, you'll go through as you now prep for Birmingham.
Well, what you try to do is throughout the entire year, you know, I divide my year up into sections, you know, like a Christmas tournament, the county tournament, and then, of course, the area tournament gets us ready for the state tournament. And what you want to do is basically evaluate each of your players individually. And, you know, for me as a coach, you want to know how can you put all this together at the right time, make the right decisions, you know, because, you know, I tell the players it's my job to substitute correctly, to be in the right defense, to give the right scouting report. And, you know, it's just a compilation of work. You know, you just go through the season, and at the end, you should have the, you know, the final decisions or drawings on what you're going to do, and that's what we try to do. You know, it's just a long, drawn-out process, but now we're at the end. There's not a whole lot more teaching. You know, you can't run any more than you already ran. You know, now it's just going out on the floor and executing, you know, what you did.
Great interview there with Anniston Girls head coach Eddie Bullock. And what a game we saw yesterday, Mickey, with Madison County. They went up 10-0. Anniston found a way to fall back thanks to Raven Cooley to get them back in the game and ended up winning it.
I know it's not a one-man show in basketball, but it was really. Raven Cooley scored 32 points, as Gerhard mentioned. But check this out. She was 7 for 12 from behind the arc. That's over 50% in threes. She was 9 of 17 overall from the floor. That's over 50% from the floor. She put her team on her back, and she carried them because Madison County, they played very well. They were knocking down threes very often in that game. So Raven Cooley had the game of her life, as Gerhard mentioned there. And I also got a funny story about Coach Bullock. You know, obviously there's going to be a coaching vacancy on the boys' side now. They needed a boys basketball coach at Anniston. Schuessler Ware gone after 19 seasons. A lot of people have asked me, would Coach Bullock move over and coach the boys? And, you know, he and I have talked about that a little bit, but he really has got it going with the girls' program. I was at the school one day, and we were in the gym. Coach Bullock and I were talking. The bell rang, so I made the comment to Coach Bullock. I said, okay, let me get out of here. I know you got a class coming in. He said, no, it's okay. Watch what happens. So I thought, what's he talking about? So I looked down, and we're kind of up in the upper level of the gym, and I see the girls, a bunch of girls coming out from the locker room dressed in gym uniform, and they walk out. They each get around at their own goals, and they start shooting free throws, and Coach Bullock said, that's the girls' team. He said, I don't even have to tell them what to do. Now, I thought that made an impact on me because I thought, you know, Coach Bullock's really got a great program going. So, and I'm sure he could do that with the boys if he decided to move over and coach the boys. But just one of the best basketball programs in our area, what the Anniston girls have been able to do.
I know he mentioned this in his post-game press conference. I don't think he mentioned it in the interview there, but he pulled Raven Cooley aside. It was about 8-0 to start the game, and he told her, you know, this is your time to go out there, and she did. She ended up 32 points, and I thought that was really neat because he said, you know, they've been lacking leadership, and he's had to pull them all together, and to see her take those words and go out and have 32 points was really something special, and that shows how much respect they have for him.
The way Madison County was shooting the ball, if Raven Cooley doesn't go off, 32 points, 7 of 12 on threes. If she doesn't have that kind of game, we're not interviewing Coach Bullock about going to Birmingham. It just would not have happened. So, again, a great day for a senior who's meant so much to that program. I know Coach Bullock loves coaching that young lady. She's meant so much to his program. He'll hate to see her go, but they're hoping they've got at least 2 more games.
All right, well, good luck to all of the local teams that will be playing in Birmingham next week, and we'll have you covered right here on TV 24 with all of those games. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, it's the Locker Room Roundtable, so hang out with us. Back here in the locker room, almost time for the Locker Room Roundtable. We got a little more to talk about high school basketball, though. Cherokee County played today, Westminster Christian, and Westminster back to Birmingham.
Yep, in the 4A boys, Westminster did what they did last year, Chase. They came in and knocked off our local teams and captured a region championship. You know, they had a great game with White Plains on Saturday. You know, White Plains, this is really 2 good teams Coach Randall has had there in a row, and this team I thought might have enough to knock off Westminster just because it seems like no matter what 5 Coach Randall has on the floor, they can all shoot the ball.
Right.
Westminster's not a great offensive team. Matter of fact, they score in the 40s most of the time in the regional tournament, but they're so good defensively. But they were able to shut White Plains down for about a quarter and a half on Saturday. You know, White Plains scored a 3 with 7:21 left in the second quarter on Saturday. Didn't score again until midway through the third. So Westminster really locked them down defensively and knocked off White Plains on Saturday. Then they come in on Wednesday and they beat Cherokee County. The game was pretty close, but really I was there watching the game. It really never felt close. Cherokee County really struggled to even get shots off. So it looks like Coach Ronnie Stapler, he's got that Westminster program going. Looks like they're another threat to go win a state championship.
All right, well, let's move back to college basketball. You know, the regular season's winding down. We're getting ready for March Madness. Who are going to be the favorites going in?
You know, that's the great thing about March Madness. Really, anybody. That's the wonderful thing about the tournament. That's why it's so fun to watch and so compelling to college basketball fans. But I guess, you know, I kind of like Oklahoma. I know they've struggled. They've had a couple of tough losses late in the season, but I kind of like what Oklahoma has. I don't think you can ever count out the big boys. You know, I know they're not having the typical Duke and North Carolina seasons, but they'll be in there. And as far as the SEC goes, Kentucky's not typical Kentucky, but hey, they can beat anybody on any given night. I could go on and on and on, but I think it's pretty much the usual suspects. And then you've got obviously the potential for a lot of upsets as well.
All right. The Daytona 500 this past Sunday, and what a crazy finish to the race. Let's take a look at this video here. In the last couple of laps, it was led mostly there by the number 20 car, but Denny Hamlin pushed his way through, and Mickey, it came down to a close finish.
This was an incredible finish, and as you see it here, it looked like Martin Truex was going to get him, and then Hamlin used that side bump draft. You see him kick out a little bit to the right. That enabled him to win this race, as you'll see right here, in a photo finish. They don't get any more photo finishing than that. That was an incredible win for Denny Hamlin. But let me make a comment about it. To me, what happened at the front of the field with Hamlin and Truex was fantastic. But I think what may be even more important was what happened in the back of the field. No numbskull wrecked everybody and got into this trying to finish the race thing and cautions and and that's what to me, that's one of the biggest challenges NASCAR faces is you've got the guys up front on any given Sunday racing for the lead. Yeah. It's those numbskulls in the back that are a lap down, 2 laps down, or no way they're going to get up there. They can't resist wrecking the field and getting into that white checkered finish, the yellow flags and all that stuff that makes the end of the race so frustrating to watch. So hats off to all those guys in the back of the field that were not in contention for letting us see that fantastic finish up front.
You think we'll see more of this, especially at Talladega and other super speedways?
I hope so, because to me, again, that's one of the biggest problems NASCAR faces. They can't control the weather. That's one thing they can't control. But they need to pound it into these drivers' heads. If you're in the back of the field and you do not have a chance to win, I know you want to race and get as many positions as you can, but now the way the points are set up, it's not as important where you finish now. Right. Winning the race is important, more important than anything. Let the guys up front who are in contention race cleanly. Fans get a good finish, because next week those guys in the back may be up front, and they'd want the same thing, same benefit of the doubt.
Well, we can't get out of here without talking some college football. Peyton Barber and the Auburn Tigers. He is declared for the NFL draft a couple weeks ago. What is this going to do for Peyton Barber, and what is this going to do for Auburn?
Well, we're into that time of year where we're leading up to the NFL draft. You've got the scouting combine going on. So, but yeah, Peyton Barber's probably the most interesting in-state story, because when he announced he was leaving, it took a lot of people by surprise. But then when you really look at it, with the guys Auburn have it running back, plus the guys they've got coming in, I think maybe it was a good move, because he may not play as much next year as he did this past year.
Right.
So his stock is probably as high as it's ever going to be. He's a big physical guy. He's a great kid. So I actually think that he will latch on with somebody. He may not be the fastest guy, may not have the most moves. We didn't really get to see a lot of him at Auburn because he just had trouble breaking into the rotation. But I think he's going to make somebody a very reliable NFL player. You know, coaches love guys that are coachable, that work hard, stay out of trouble. That's Peyton Barber.
All right, well, that'll wrap up our locker room roundtable. And if you want to watch the show again, there's several more opportunities you can do that. Again, on Thursdays, you can catch it at 7:30 a.m., 4:30 in the afternoon, and 8:30 in the evening. And on Fridays, bright and early at 6:30 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. And log on to TV24.tv. In the on-demand section, you can watch it online. And again, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. That'll wrap up the show for this week. We will be back again next week in the locker room.